Just sit with it for a moment. Let it sink in.
We're here.
We're here.
Amazing.
Huzzah.
I never used that, but that was a great usage of it.
Well, for me, mentally, it is, the 1700s or something. 1600s,
I was
17th century. Yeah.
There you go. I was like, 1700s was...
Yeah. I always get those mixed up.
Same.
Still. Like
we weren't even there, and we still get them mixed up. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I have too much of I'm put too much pressure on myself to think about living in that time. But
why do you feel? Sorry, I'm wildly interested.
No,
why do you feel that you need to think about that? I think it's a wonderful thing. I'm curious what compels you.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. I'm like 98% joking. But 2%, I do think about the different ways people have lived over time and how much, particularly in the context of how much, at least my current life is more, this is editorializing, but more complicated than it has to be because I think I need to live in a system which is exploiting me. Capitalism.
Yep.
And not that capitalism, magically sprang to life in the 70s, but it makes me think about the sort of the Venn diagram of happiness and money and how below a certain threshold people can be happy and above a certain threshold people can be happy, and there's this weird middle ground that people are trying to, a lot of the people, especially in this country, are trying to fit into, that leads to a lot of unhappiness. So,
yeah, and it's interesting because I agree with you. And what came to me is because it's such a math thing, right? Because it's economic, and I'm like, are they even? I understand what you mean by trying to fit into, and I agree with that. But then the bell curve, like the visual of that, came to my mind, and I'm like, and they're trying to fit into it, but they can't get out of it because you are naturally going to be like 80% or whatever is going to be in that middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah. I mean, again, I was mostly joking,
of
but
course,
at the same time, it is something I think about. So,
yeah, it's just I recognize that as well, but it was more like, oh, that's an interesting topic that I don't think about a lot. So I'm curious why even that as a joking idea, it's still in your mind as you're pointing out. So,
yep.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And, I often think about the first person who invented shoes.
Oh, interesting.
Nobody, I think about that in terms of what impact we have on the world and how quickly it's forgotten and how the structure, at least societal structure, I'm going to talk about me. I feel puts pressure on me to make an impact on the world and to have the ego and drive to be known for it, knowing full well that nobody remembers the name of the person who made shoes the first time. Something that everybody uses, most everybody uses. And so it's like, how do I reconcile the ubiquitous pressure to contribute to the system, and especially the societal, and I'm reaching a bit here, the male push to be power, ego, drive, ambition. Not that other people can't have that, but
no, but I get what you're saying. The large tendency is for that to be more pressured on. My friend and I have discussions about this a lot in this type of a tangential but related, where for me, what I think about a lot is how women are conditioned and how we uphold our condition. And again, we're talking gender. I'm all for however anybody wants to and feels they are who they are. But these are large generalizations that we're making. I recognize that, as you are. But now, as a 42-year-old woman, I'll see young women, like I'll see young girls, like let's say 5, 6, 7, walking around in public in like princess outfits. And we all think that's cute. And it is. And then I see young boys walking around in like just pants and shirt or like, gym clothes. And I'm like, that's interesting. So we support a female's perspective of be a princess in this fantasy world. And then we women take that with us many times into our adulthood, looking for our prince or princess or non-conforming, whichever. But we're constantly looking outward. It's very interesting to me from a male perspective, it's like you're pointing out, a lot of times it's be successful, provide, get to the front of the line, beat everybody else you can so that you can be a real man or whatever those messages are. And now I'm seeing it very clearly as I just walk about the earth.
Yeah. I have that, like, even though I know it's sort of one of those perception is 9/10 the law things, but even though I have intellectually, I have this perspective of it's largely BS to fit into that. And the better way of existing in this world, from my perspective, is waking up every day and saying, how can I help people? And how can I not harm people? As opposed to how can I lie and cheat and connive my way forward to win over other people. Something political sentiment. That it's so, but it, even though intellectually I know this, it's so tied up with my identity because I've been largely the sole income for my family for the last 25 years. And then I've been unemployed for 10 months straight.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's heavy.
And so it's just like, just sort of ticking away. Every day I wake up. How have I failed yet again?
Yeah.
Even though it's a false, this term I'm trying to think of, I can't think of, but like
yeah, I know what you're
it's just not, it's not the right way to look at things.
It's not true.
Not healthy. Yeah, it's not true. It's my, sorry, this is turning into a therapy session.
Which is great. Yeah, this happens.
My value as an individual, as a human, is tied to my ability to be a good capitalist. And that has, I don't think this is too much of a reach, but and I probably shouldn't be saying it, I'll say it anyway. That has colonized my brain.
Yes. Yeah, and it's not, I mean, I know what we're just going to talk. So, it's funny because I'm looking at restarting therapy. And I'm saying this because of what you're saying, which is what I'm trying to do as I restart therapy is I want to be very clear on why I'm going to therapy. No, I think if you go and see a therapist and you do that and that's part of your daily life, that's awesome. For me, is like, I was in therapy in my 20s and that was very helpful during that time. But now in my 40s, I'm like, I want to approach it as like I have a goal that I need an expert and a professional to be a teammate with me on. And that goal, you said it so beautifully, is to decolonize my mind from my own trainings, which are very heavily, because one of the reasons I don't want to go to therapy, I shouldn't say that. I do want to go. One of the reasons I'm hesitant is financial. I'm an independent business person. I don't have health insurance because the cheapest plan for a single woman is $600 a month in New York State. And I frankly, I could take that money and put it into a savings account and then pay out of pocket if needed, but I don't want to be in that position. I want to be able to say, oh, let me go look to my health insurance and see who is a therapist that my insurance covers. And I only have to pay $15 to go see or whatever. So I think even that colonization, I'm using your terminology, is affecting my decision-making in trying to decolonize myself.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's very, very interesting.
And I'm not trying to force it at all, but it did make me think of it.
Yeah.
From a design and business perspective, this is why actual innovation is so difficult.
100%.
Because you are using the tools and systems and processes and people's perspectives to try and force a paradigm shift, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And it's why I think so many innovation efforts,
mm-hmm.
whether they're a department or a project that gets spun up or whatever, why they fail. Because it's like, all right, you've got to work within the structure of sprints. You've got to work within the structure of the system that we've built. You can't go outside of that because, as a leader, I suspect that this might make me unemployed in the near future because I might become redundant if you innovate too much. And so it's like the entire system is set up to maintain the status quo.
Absolutely. It's like a body.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's like the body is always trying to reach homeostasis, right? I was thinking about this. Gosh, who the heck was it? I'm forgetting. But I'm sure you've heard something along the lines of like, by 2050 or something, they believe that humans are going to integrate with machines or something like that in some way, right? And what I was thinking about that, I always think about the classic, like Xerox PARC, like first computers that really had like a what did they call it at the time, a GUI, and where it's all a metaphor. It like all that we see on a computer is a metaphor for a desktop that exists in real life, right? Or an office and files and folders. Okay. Right. So I'm thinking, can machines really take us over, or are they just an externalization, kind of like Lord of the Rings, where the ring of power is like an externalization of your power, right? Aren't they just like an externalization of who we are internally? And as you're pointing out, which to me is it's part of the reason why I love working in the customer experience, user experience field, because I see businesses not as businesses, but they're simply human. They're just human beings. They're groups of human beings. And as you're pointing out, this group of human beings, it's going to be very hard to get them to innovate because that's just not what we do. We try to survive in a comfortable state. It's not bad. So now one has to say, okay, so how do I make an impact that helps to the businesses reach their goals so that their customers can reach their goals and everybody gets value in a human way? But how do I make an impact without redesigning everything? And I think that's one of the most interesting and fun challenges.
Yeah. So do you have an answer to that? How do you?
The answer that I've employed, and my business partner as well, and now we have a team of interns, which is very, very cool because they're getting great experience in this terrible UX market. So it's benefiting everybody, right? So I'm trying to drink my own Kool-Aid, for lack of a better metaphor. And the answer that I don't want to say come up with, because I did not invent this, but the answer maybe that I've adopted is I call it the Trojan horse method. So it's like a mix of the Trojan horse method and this idea of letting things emerge versus trying to push things to happen. And so what I mean by that is like a lot of times it's, especially as UX, CX people, innovation people, service design people, whatever the thing is, we'll go into a business and say, okay, this is what you need to do to be more human-centered or to innovate or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to saying, let me insert myself in this business and really look for areas that are ready to do something different. And then move with that flow in a way that moves them along at a pace that they can handle.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lot of humbling our skill set because we do have a really amazing skill set. But it's only as amazing as it can be actualized.
Yeah. My first reaction when you said that is like, I don't think we can fix and can barely improve the systems that
Sure.
we interact with. And I know that is my way of framing the world is largely around risk identification, risk mitigation, what could go wrong, what is going wrong. And I know that this definitely limits me in a lot of ways because it manifests in ways of like, and I know I've said this before, but like, I'm really not good at the shit sandwich of, leading people through like a readout of research or something where you're like, here's all the things that are going well. And here's some things that are just not optimal. And also here's some things that are going well. Because I didn't get hired to find the good things. I got hired to find the bad things so we can go fix them. And along the way, we are going to find some good things. And so my brain is constantly looking at like, how is this not working? How will this not work? Because I'm really trying to think in terms of like, how can we mitigate the harm of this system? And I think that, maybe being a little bit more optimistic about that might be helpful. But
well, I was going to say, I was like, wow, this is really interesting because we started a conversation with how you were phrasing a lot of your thoughts. And you're right. Like a lot of it's not that you're trying to find problems because you're a negative person. It's not that at all. I mean, I just met you, but you don't seem like a negative person at all. But it's an interesting framing because then that I can see how that can extend, and it is extending. And I do think part of that switch for me, because I can say this because I see this in myself, right? And one of the things that has started to help, I reached a point. I've been in the UX CX field since, I don't know, let's say 20 years now. And maybe it's the same for you. Maybe you've done this a few times. I don't know. I've reached a point where I'm like, what is the point? Nobody's listening to me. Businesses don't really want to change. I'm coming up with, or my team or whoever I'm working with, we're coming up with these solutions that can make a better impact for customers, for the business, for the tech team, for the data, whoever. But there's such resistance to implementing them. Like, why am I doing this? And yet I didn't feel called to do something else. It's not like some other opportunities were coming to me. So I attempted, I say attempted because I could see my own flaws, but I attempted to really accept that everything I was saying and move through, okay, so if this is all true, let's say this is true, to your point, like what can happen and where can I chip away and make an impact? It's, can I accept that my impact is never going to be, not never, it's unlikely to be I'm going to go in and redesign this process, even for an e-commerce company, right? I'm going to redesign this returns process. We're going to do service blueprints. It's going to be amazing. It's never going to be that, Liz. You've been doing this, whatever, let's say 15 years. It's not going to happen that way. So now if I can accept that as reality, similar to capitalism, if I can accept that as the reality, how can I still maintain my sanity? It really was a survival thing. And create an impact.
Yeah.
I do think that has been helpful. And so by seeing, so for example, now one of our main clients, I didn't visualize this, and I'm kind of kicking myself for not visualizing it. Like, how did I not see that this type of work would be a perfect client? But one of our clients now is a software company. They build the application that works on desktop application. And the way that we work with them we've worked with them for the past year. And we started with the big discovery research project, and that was helpful in helping us learn about their company. But now our work is much more like mini projects. And I say mini because of the types of projects you and I are so used to having, that always like they're amazing, and then they hit but we can't do anything with that.
Right.
And now it's like, hey, how about we implement something like Hotjar and watch what people do for the next few months. And then the team we're working with is like, that's an amazing idea. And I'm like, that would have been like a mini step for a project I had in my head. And this is nothing against the company at all, but it's more just, I think, are so amped up as UX, CX people with our skill set that it's overwhelming for the people that we work with. And then both of us hit this wall of failure.
Yeah. I think part of it is that our work, for the most part, in order to begin it and in order to end it / implement it, really does require other people.
Yes.
Where the business side, and I'm including product management in that, can sit there and do their stuff relatively independently and then proclaim a direction. And engineering can sit and do things relatively independently because they know how to build software.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them. But for our stuff to get done, we need them to do stuff. We need them to do stuff. And all of a sudden, we're kind of making it their job to do UX on top of their regular job. So, of course, there's resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we're doing broad brush speaking now.
Of course,
But, and so I'm right there with you on de-scoping efforts.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've had a couple of times in the past forever. But more recently, now that I've sort of learned it a bit better, to say, hey, client comes along and they're like, hey, we want to redesign our site. And I'm like, great. And they're like, yeah, we're going to run this project from this month to this month and get it done. I'm like, great. That's actually 6 projects. Not to force it into a sprint thing again, but, we're going to do this first, and then we're going to pause for an hour and talk about what happened, see what we want to do, and then we'll do this, as opposed to we're just going to go straight through and do this. Because I think it hits so many things. Like, humans need instant gratification more than we like to admit. And so having a 6-month project or a 3-year project, like, people can't work toward that. But if you're saying, over the next 3 weeks, we're going to start here, we're going to end here, and then there are a couple possibilities after that, and we'll know. It's less of an ask. I think it's less weighty, and I feel like it's a little bit easier to get input, a little bit easier to get buy-in to take that kind of approach. So when you're talking about, hey, let's just implement Hotjar, and we'll sit back and let it run and gather data. Who doesn't love gathering data? But
right.
Like,
and in the meantime,
no, go ahead.
In the meantime, right, our team is looking at, okay, so let's put together a system for how we actually use this data. We know we're actually going to get it. So now that we have that happening, let's really get smart about, when I say get smart, not that we're not smart, but it's what we actually want, what types of things are we trying to validate? We know that at a high level, but let's get really detailed so we can put together a sort of playbook or system around how we extract the data and manipulate it. When I say manipulate it, not change it, but like look at it, analyze it. There we go. So that we can provide useful feedback for the teams that we're gathering this data for.
Yeah.
And another large part of our, I want to say method, but it was somewhat intentional and unintentional at first. But I'm recognizing, like, why have you not been doing this for 20 years? Is that we've gotten really good with this client around, like, instead of pushing, like I was saying previously, we're here to support you, customer support lead. Let us know what you need.
Right. Yep.
And that kind of started with, like, eventually they were like, hey, we have this email template that we don't think is working. I'm rolling my eyes. I'm like, email template. Okay, we'll take a look. But then we're like, okay, we'll take a look. And then, we redo the email and we, implement it, and they start seeing results. And they're like, that was amazing. So now they are like, okay, now we need to do this larger project and this larger project. Yeah. And it was less of our energy because we weren't trying to, like, push our knowledge down their throats. And now it's kind of this symbiotic, I don't know if that's the good one. Is that a good one?
I mean,
where everybody's feeding off each other in a good way?
I guess it depends on what your perspective is, but yes. Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, I mean the one where everybody's benefiting.
Yes. Symbiotes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of it's reignited my passion both for consulting and for UX and CX. I'm always going to be passionate about CX, but what I mean is the actual doing of it. It's reignited my passion because I feel like everybody's benefiting and everybody's bought into it. And I'm not Sisyphus trying to push the boulder up the hill and it rolling back on me every time.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it certainly, to me, it has felt, probably will continue to feel Sisyphusian. And I think that the only salve to that is having moments where I feel like I've helped somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I am to a point where, like, I look at what UX has become, don't recognize it, don't agree with it. I think we've made some really terrible choices that some people have written books about as ways that we should be doing things, and they're wrong.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about that? Not, you don't have to call anybody out, more just like the topics.
Well, I think it was a massive disservice to the profession and to the people that we work with to try and fit any UX activity, to try and fit all of the UX activities within a development sprint.
Mm-hmm.
It is dumb.
Mm-hmm.
If you map out the case and of with individuals and to help them understand why, like, everyone's like, oh yeah, it is. That doesn't make any sense. And everyone's like, yep, great, but that's what the system is. So
We got to do it.
Do everything in this 2-week sprint. And there are activities you can do within development sprint, but for the most part, it is external to and precedes any development sprint. It is mini waterfall. Like, that's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You can still run it in an agile framework if you want, but it isn't agile business. Again, it's this whole like someone saw this thing that works sort of well and then said, let's apply it to everything. And that's just not how it works. And I know other UXE type people who are like, no, that's wrong. We can totally fit in, here, let me write some books about it. And make a name for myself, whatever. I'm not bitter. I'm a little bit bitter. It's
yeah.
So
I remember talking about that when it was first happening. Because when I say it was first happening, when the agile lean world started for me, it was around 2000, let's say 7. And I was working in house at a large financial services company, and they had hired a Scrum master to train us. So as we're doing that, it was myself, and then the project teams, like many places, are structured with a UX person. I think at that time I was called an IA, and like developers and project managers and business people. So we're all getting trained, and the project managers and the business people and the developers are like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And I'm like, so...
But does it?
I was like, so, like, I understand the idea. Like, if I was going to build a car in the assembly line idea, and then breaking that assembly line down because it's software and not physical parts, and there are things that happen. Totally get it, totally on board. But don't you have to have the design of the car that you're building first before you put it on the assembly line? Like, and the Scrum Master's like, well, that's a good point. Maybe you can help me figure out how UX and IA and all this stuff fits in.
Yeah.
I can't even remember where that went, but you get, I'm echoing what you're saying, where it's like, to me, it was always, I actually think I did a presentation on this once, but it was always this idea of like, you have to have the product defined first before you sprint ahead to build it. Yeah.
But the answer is, but we're trying to, build the car while we're driving it.
Yeah.
And it's like, and how has that been working out for you so far? It hasn't. Would you like to continue doing that? Oh, you would. Okay. Well, all right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And back to like, how do I remove my ego as much as possible, yet still work toward having an impact or reducing harm within these systems that are structured in such a way as to devalue those perspectives,
mm-hmm.
where it's more like, we just want you on the assembly line. When the widget comes in, you pull the lever, widget goes out. That's your job. And while there are some activities that we do that are more on the assembly line part of things, I do think that the impact we could have on helping the business understand who its customers are better, understand better what promises they need to make, and then what promises, how they're delivering on those promises. To me, that's where I think we can have the biggest impact. And it is the place where, because of a lot of decisions that have been made, not specifically by individuals, but just how things have run since 2007, I blame the iPhone on a lot of this stuff.
Oh, interesting. I want to hear this. I hadn't thought about this.
So maybe I have. Finish the thought really quick.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
The, it's like, how do I be a part of the system, help make the system more functional when it doesn't want that. And that's the thing where I'm kind of struggling right now with my career, with like my perspective on the profession, with just even job hunting, like or project hunting for consulting stuff. It's just, anyway, the iPhone thing is, when that came out, everything became about apps and the application of things. And then it was, a lot of these, and the reason there was so much focus on that is businesses wanted to push information at people.
Mm-hmm.
And apps were the only thing we had for a long time that you could do push notifications with. So if we hadn't gone down that path, the web would have been so much better.
No, that's a great point. Yeah.
Because we would have put more effort into it. And there wouldn't have been this, this is probably too far, but I'm going to say it anyway. There wouldn't have been such a focus on building, complete apps that really are just micro features in search of being consumed by something greater. So that, it all, plus, the fact that these things are distraction devices, depression devices, really leaning into the alliteration there. But
it's my favorite literary mechanism, actually, language mechanism. Yeah.
Yeah, that and rhyming. You need to get humans to do anything, alliterate and make it rhyme.
Yeah.
But it's
it's interesting to me. I what you're saying, I it's a great perspective, my opinion. And I was reading the news this morning, and I was reading about TikTok, and I had I'm not saying this to try to degrade anybody in their opinions, but it was more like, really? We're protesting an app getting shut down? I know there's much more to it. So, but this was just my thoughts of like, I'm aligning it with what you're saying about being a distraction device, and that we helped create, right? In many
absolutely.
ways. And so it's always top of mind for me, where I'm like, that's what we're protesting? Like, I don't know. That doesn't feel, it doesn't feel right to me. It feels like there are a lot of social media apps that if you want to use social media, you have other options. It's not like taking some sort of human right away.
Right.
Or something like that.
No, right. But it is taking away. Right.
Yeah.
And that's enough to trigger that. I mean,
Exactly.
This is the whole like, hey, I've got this thing. It is demonstrably better for you, but it means you have to give up this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, immediately is, I don't want that new thing, even if it's better. I want the thing that I'm already used to.
Yeah.
And it's, there's so many lenses you can look at that through, which to me, I agree with you. Like, it's just an app while you're protesting that. Another lens on it is like, this is an avenue for expression for a lot of people. It's an avenue for revenue for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I still think that the expression part, I'm going to set aside, but like the revenue thing, like with YouTube or whatever, it's like, you're still the product, and the revenue you get from the service of TikTok that you are the product of, like that trade-off, while it may be nice that some people are making six figures off of some of these services, that trade for what you're losing.
Yeah, YouTube is making way more off you.
Way more.
Yeah.
Or
should we say Google?
And it is. And it's like, at what point can people really start to think in terms of, oh, you don't exist without me. TikTok doesn't exist without me looking at things or uploading things. Same with YouTube, everything. Twitter, X, whatever. I'm not saying strike, but I'm not saying strike.
Yeah.
But it's like we make these trades based on comfort seeking. It is all very understandable from a human behavior perspective. But again, like the technology has advanced so fast and we don't and haven't, that there's just this gulf between what people can really handle and what is being thrown at them every day. And I know we've gone kind of far afield of everything. It's all related.
It's all related. I'm like, it's fine. Well, because you were saying about TikTok and expression. Oh, I was going to say something about that. It's gone. It'll come back to me or it won't.
Yeah. And, it's like, I get it because, like, on the expression side of things, I really get it because, and this was sort of waning before Asshat took over Twitter, but, like, I had a lot of, what's that term when you feel like you have a personal connection with somebody, that parasocial.
Oh.
I had social connections with people on Twitter because from 2006 to probably 2015 or so, like I really stuck with if I can't hear their voice in my head, I don't follow them. So I was following people that I know, and then I had established relationship with, and like, so for a long time that really meant something to me, and that meaning was starting to get diminished a bit over time, but like was really taken away when Asshat took over. And so I feel like, I don't feel it so much now, but I did a year and a half ago when I left, this grieving process, because I lost something that was keeping me connected to people I know, even though it had kind of gotten to the point where it was more ambient connection rather than direct connection so often. But so, like, I get that from the protesting the TikTok ban, because people are, I suspect it's largely parasocial, but people are still making real social connections via these services. So I understand the loss feeling and the surprise, and you can't take this away from me, it's mine.
Yeah, right.
So I get it for sure. Definitely.
And I think that I agree with you that that's valid. And those are valid reactions and emotions. And as I think we're both saying, at the same time, I take a level up. I'm like, I can't help but feel guilt around, like, oh man, those habit forming loops that we were all looking at back in like 2011, 2012. Got them good on that one. But that being said, that's back to our earlier conversation. That's human nature. These are human things. People need to, a lot, myself included, we need to feel, find a way to feel connected. Yeah. And we're going to do that in the, less, when I say easy, I'm not saying it in a negative way, but it's like the path that has the least restrictions and also the least dangers, perceived dangers. I was at a wedding on Sunday, and I was the only person that was in tech, sitting at a table full of school counselors, and it was interesting to talk to them about how they're using AI or having to combat using AI, But one of them was talking about how, God, I'm going to mess up the details, but long story short, they're not doing this for specific like named students, but basically they're putting some student information into like, let's say a chat GPT or some sort of like LLM, um and then using the results in a good way. But I'm the technologist at the table rolling my eyes like, I don't think you understand that we are feeding these machines our data. And that's not your fault necessarily, because nobody's telling you that. No one's saying, hey, what you're really doing is giving us a bunch of data to give to everybody else in our answers. And that doesn't necessarily need to be a bad thing or a good thing. It's more just like we're talking about with apps, and especially social media apps with feeds. Like the feed was just a habit forming loop. Like you want to see what other people are doing.
Yeah.
But you create real human connection through that mechanism. But that human connection and your behavior before that connection happens is based off of a manipulative loop, right? Had you known that, would you made a different decision? Maybe not, but at least you would have known that.
Right.
And so we're seeing that same behavior. It was just like with advertising in the 1950s and 60s. You know, it's like when the ad companies were putting up the billboards, and all of it's manipulation. We're still, though, not announcing it as such, because I get why businesses don't do that, because then it looks bad for their business.
It looks bad. Yeah. Hey, we're trying to trick you out of your money.
Yeah,
give us more.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. As opposed to, and I think that's another. And I have a lot. I should say I've taken a lot of risk in my career by staying independent since 2009, let's say. It has not always been easy. I don't have health insurance still, like things like that, right? However, I recognize now that it's been a risk. Obviously, it's a risk I've been willing to take, because I can say my business partner and I just had this conversation recently we had an in-person retreat in California, and I can say, I don't want to work with this type of business. Like, I have that ability.
Yeah.
We all have that ability, but the way that I have set up my career, that is much more, it's much closer, accessible to me to make that choice. Versus if I had decided to stay in-house at a place and all of a sudden that company goes haywire, and I'm like, crap, I could stay here and have a job, or I could leave and not.
Yeah.
It's a hard decision to make.
Yeah. And it's something I've been struggling with for years, because, I went independent, not of my own choice in 2009. And then I spent the next little while dipping in and out of being independent and not. And in like 2017, I was working for a company, and, how I put it is, I think I did great work there and I helped them, and it was pointless. And it was not something I wanted to be putting my energy to. And so I decided, no, I'm just going to be independent, and I'm only going to work with companies who work to increase dignity, reduce suffering. And as long as I don't have to do more than one backflip to rationalize that, it's fine. But I feel like the pool of potential clients has just been shrinking since 2016 for that kind of world. And so, like, where I'm at right now, I think that I'm probably better suited to being independent and helping very targeted efforts, even if they're strategic efforts, but like very specific. Hey, we need to find out that's, or going internal-ish as a fractional person to help, fix a system that's not running optimally. But I've been finding it really hard to find people interested in doing that right now. So it's
a challenge.
Yeah.
It's been a challenge for me since I got into.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird right now. So
it's very weird right now, and I think this is sort of I don't know the descriptive word to use, but I'll just say the thing, and maybe we could think about the word later. Where you were talking about ego, and I was talking about acceptance, and so these kind of metaphysical is maybe a little bit more than I'm saying, but what we have started to develop, at least at our company, is like, we're not going to find these people, these companies. We would expend a lot of energy trying to find these companies. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So how do we put energy out there so they can find us? And that is a big risk because it's again, back to what I was saying, where letting things emerge versus trying to push them. And I think this is a metaphor for like life. And I'm sure many people have written about this in a much more educated way. But the idea of like, it's like, I'm not even going to do it. I was going to use the dating metaphor, but I'm like, I'm tired of hearing this metaphor, so I'm not going to do it. But I don't know. Let's say you were looking for the perfect therapist. You could go through and you should, and have consultations with many people, and then you could select one that fits. Or you might have all these consultations and be like, man, none of these really fit, but I have to select one. Yeah. Or you could have these consultations say, none of them really fit. Let me keep searching and see what happens. Like, let me just sit back for a second and let's see what emerges. And usually something will emerge. Now, the thing with you as CX consulting and independent work is, and work in general, is we are in a capitalistic society. We do need to make money. So even we at CX by Design, we have to take projects that are not maybe our ideal projects. So you just have to. But in those cases, what we've aimed to do is say, we still are going to try to provide the most value we can for the money that we're getting paid. That's just one of our values. That's what we do as a company. However, for those types of clients, we're going to try to use systems that help us to save our time and energy on those types of projects. What I mean to say is like, okay, we're trying to have everything documented, our process. What are all of our research steps? What are all of the different deliverable templates? So that we can, on these projects that are not the best fit, but still we want to provide great value, we don't need to give a ton of our time and energy to them to do that, to provide that value. So that when these clients that are the fit do emerge, we can dive into those and still keep our business afloat in the meantime. So, but it's a dance. It really is a dance.
Yeah. Yeah, to build off of your therapist metaphor, the other way is, and I this is maybe even what you're saying, but it's kind of my approach is like, whoever gets back to me first, the litmus is like, are you terrible? No, great, let's go. And I'm going to get something out of this that is going to help me. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to stick with this person forever.
Right. We can iterate.
We can iterate. We can still be looking, and I can hit a point with them. And I have with therapists in the past where it's like, I have plateaued with you, and I don't feel like I'm going to get any more out of it, so I'm done. And maybe I'm just extracting value from another human. But
well, that's the dance. This has been. You are extracting value for a human, but they're also hopefully getting value because they've helped you get to a certain point. That is the exchange.
That's true. Yeah.
And you're still, they are also getting value from you because you're paying them.
Because I'm paying. Yeah.
And that's, I think, an interesting way to bring it back to our work, to think about our work and that litmus test for taking on clients or even employers.
Mm-hmm.
I can start a job that at least gets me, it's not terrible. I don't have to stay with them forever, but it at least helps me to meet this next goal.
Yeah. Yeah. What can I get out of this?
Mm-hmm.
Ideally beyond money for rent or whatever.
Exactly. If that's what you want. Like some people just want money for rent. True. And that's also okay. So it's like knowing what you want and need and then working to get that without, as you're pointing out, you and I have a similar value system with this, without doing harm, because it's something I don't want to do.
All right. So time for 7 plus or minus 2 questions.
Oh,
just kidding. I think there are very few people that think that's funny, but I think it's funny. So
I think it's funny.
It's like it's another thing that has sat with us for so long and has been used to mean things it was never meant to mean.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. Mm-hmm. All right. Question the first. What is one thing you would change about your profession?
When you say profession, do you mean like UX, CX overall, like as an industry?
Sure.
I would change, I would institute a sort of UX or CX professional maturity model for those who don't want to be managers. Or people who do want to be managers, I guess. But I think creating a sort of here's how you go from being a beginner UX person to an intermediate to an advanced to a mega advanced. I think having that sort of perspective would be helpful, especially to those of us. I think that's why, to be honest, a lot of us who are our experience level, who may be unemployed or even are looking for different jobs, I think that's leading to a lot of the angst, because I think a lot of us are looking for jobs that are where we were 5 years ago, but we don't know where we're going yet. As an industry as well. So I think that would be one thing I would change.
Okay. I like that one. All right. Second question. What do you wish people cared more about?
Each other. I think I say that in a way of, even if the other person is not someone you like, they're still a person. And I think if we cared more about each other, despite who the others are, we would make those different decisions around, is this technology helpful or harmful? Is this morally okay to put this data into this model? I think if we were thinking about it on a human level and having care for those around us, we would be making different decisions.
Yeah, my off the cuff premise about the world would be better if everybody had empathy for other people, understanding that it is okay and necessary and right to have empathy, but that doesn't mean that you can't then also hold them accountable for their actions. Because I think understanding the context within which someone has arrived at the point of taking an action that is counter to societal norms or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but we're not allowed, or not, not allowed to have empathy for people who are bad.
Right.
We're not supposed to do that. And I think that that's just backwards, and it just leads to a system, again, that maintains the status quo. So empathy is innovation is what I'm pitching.
Oh, I like it. That's your next book.
Yeah, that's my next book. Yeah. All right. Next question. What's the best meal you've ever had?
Gosh, I remember it well. We were in Baltimore. I think it was an IA summit. I think it was like 2015-ish. And it was at some like gastropub. And it was just this like simple meal of braised rabbit. And it was just delightful. And everything was fresh, and it was cooked very nicely. And I was with lovely people, and it was an awesome experience.
Next question. What do you wish you'd done differently?
Believed in myself more and had more confidence in myself, versus looking to others to provide that validation, especially in my career.
You're good at this.
I ask myself these questions a lot.
What am I doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's exactly it.
If you left what you're doing now, what would you do for a living?
I was thinking about this. I think I would teach what I'm doing now, which is I don't know if that counts.
There's no wrong answer to any of these questions. So.
Yeah, thank you for that validation, which I previously said I didn't want nor need. No, I'm just kidding. I appreciate it. No, it's because I was thinking about like what my skills are. Like, we have a lot of skill. We're skillful people, and I also teach in addition to running our business. And I think I'm pretty good at that. And I do a lot of speaking, and I like this type of interaction. So I do think I would teach. I think I would teach. I never thought I'd say that, but it's true.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Last question. Imagine it's a year from now. What do you hope to not be carrying anymore?
Oh my God, you said it and I'm forgetting it. I don't want to be carrying. How do I say this? So it's not, I'm a deep person. That's who I am. I don't want to be carrying, a lot of the unprocessed emotional trauma that I've had throughout my life. I think many of us have. But I don't want to be carrying that. I think it's part of the colonizing of my mind. Mm-hmm. And I think I want to process most of the unprocessed emotions I have and create a system. I don't know if that sounds so inhuman, but I create a habit of continuously doing that so that I can walk around the earth as master of my own thinking and feeling.
Unprocessed emotional trauma.
Yeah. And that can be big or small. Like,
yeah.
But I think I know that not having truly felt a lot of the, like when I say like really gone through the feelings of a lot of the things that have happened to me in my life, and I think this for most people, is what Carl Jung had a quote, which is something along the lines of like, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. And I look at that quote every day and like, how do I better make the unconscious conscious so I can process it and it's not ruling my life?
It's a good one.
Thank you.